The champagne flowed freely, glinting under the ballroom's crystal chandeliers as if the universe itself was raising a glass to my triumph. 15 years of grit, countless sleepless nights, and sacrifices beyond counting had brought me here. At 43, I had built something out of nothing, a tech empire that had revolutionized financial security and turned me into a self-made billionaire. Tonight, the applause and congratulatory handshakes were for me, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease gnawing at the edges of my elation. Ava, my wife, my anchor, or so I believed, moved gracefully through the crowd. Her crimson gown was a statement of power and elegance, hugging her figure in a way that drew more eyes than I was comfortable with. I told myself it was pride I felt as I watched her, not the faint, unwelcome twinge of jealousy. We had been married for 15 years, and if my company was my fortress, Ava was its queen. But as the evening unfolded, I noticed something. Her laugh, a sound that used to make me smile, seemed sharper, more calculated. And then there was Carter, my CFO. Their exchanges were too comfortable, too familiar. A hand brushing an arm here, a whispered word there. It wasn't jealousy that churned in my gut anymore. It was suspicion. The moment passed quickly, swallowed by the night's celebrations, but it lingered like a whisper at the back of my mind. Later, as we drove home in silence, Ava stared out of the window, her face illuminated by the passing streetlights. She looked serene, but I felt the distance between us, a chasm that had grown without my noticing. That week, I tried to push the feeling aside, burying myself in work. But Ava was distant at home, her replies clipped, her phone always in hand but angled away from me. The signs, subtle but undeniable, began to pile up. Late nights she couldn't explain, whispered calls she brushed off as work emergencies, and a certain lack of warmth in her eyes when she looked at me. Days to keep her in my mind, I'd finally decided to confront this labor, whose till was beginning to weigh on me. It was during one of those tense dinners, with only the clink of cutlery breaking the silence, that she finally spoke. "Daniel," she said, setting down her wine glass with a soft but deliberate clink. Her tone was calm, almost rehearsed. "I can't do this anymore." The words struck like a whip. I set down my fork, slowly, forcing myself to stay composed. "Leave Patronrise?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "This? Us." Her voice was even, devoid of emotion, as if she were presenting a business proposal. "I've met someone who can give me what I need, more than this. More than you." For a moment, time froze, then it unraveled in chaos inside my mind. "More?" I said, my voice low but trembling with incredulity. "What more could you possibly want?" She hesitated, then looked me in the eye, her gaze cold and unforgiving. "Time. Attention. Someone who makes me feel alive." "You've built an empire, Daniel, but you left me behind in the rubble." A rumble passed through the crowd. She hesitated, then said soothingly, "This is for an angel." She left that weekend, packing her things with the efficiency of someone who had already moved on in her mind. But what shattered me wasn't just the loss. It was the revelation of who she'd left me for. Carter. My trusted CFO, the man I had mentored and relied on to help build the very empire she claimed had consumed me. It was the ultimate betrayal, but I wasn't one to crumble. If Carter and Ava thought they could destroy everything I had worked for, they had gravely underestimated the man I had become. The weekend Ava left felt like a slow-motion car crash, a brutal inevitability that you see coming but can't stop. She was clinical about it, packing her things in neat, deliberate movements, while I stood there, dumbfounded. Each item she folded and placed into her suitcase seemed to scream the truth louder. She was done with me. By the time the door clicked shut behind her, the house felt unnervingly empty. Ava's perfume lingered in the air like the ghost of something I couldn't name. Loss? Regret? Fury? Or perhaps all three? I stood there in the silence, staring at the void where her suitcase had been, my mind racing, I'd met someone who could give me more. It wasn't just my wife who had betrayed me, I reminded myself. It was Carter, my right-hand man, a person I'd trusted with everything from company secrets to pivotal decisions. Together, we had maneuvered through hostile takeovers, late-night deadlines, and the ruthless pressures of an industry that doesn't forgive mistakes. If Ava leaving was a personal blow, Carter's betrayal was professional treason, a dagger aimed at the heart of everything I had built. I spent that night pacing through the house like a man possessed. The walls seemed to close in around me, every framed photo mocking the life I thought I had. I poured myself a glass of scotch, then another, and finally fell asleep on the couch, too exhausted to keep the endless storm of questions in my head at bay. The next morning, anger replaced the numbness. I had built my life around two things: discipline and loyalty. Those principles had carried me through countless challenges, from clawing my way out of a dingy apartment in my 20s to creating an empire worth billions. Now, it seemed like a cruel irony that the people closest to me had no concept of either. I couldn't let this stand. I didn't need to go looking for the truth. It came to me, unbidden. By Monday, whispers were already circulating. A senior employee in accounting mentioned irregularities in one of our subsidiary accounts, a matter Carter had brushed off just days earlier. That comment, small as it was, felt like the thread I needed to pull. I dug deeper. By Wednesday, I had hired a forensic accountant to go through every line item connected to Carter. What I discovered was worse than I had imagined. Shell accounts, laundered funds, subtle shifts in the numbers that would have gone unnoticed if I hadn't been searching with the precision of a man determined to uncover every secret. Carter hadn't just stolen my wife, he'd been siphoning money from the company for months. The betrayal was intricate, almost surgical in its execution, which only made it sting more. It wasn't just greed driving Carter, it was arrogance. The man had believed himself untouchable, shielded by our friendship, by my trust in him. As the pieces of their deceit fell into place, a plan began to form in my mind. I wouldn't just expose them. I would make sure they regretted every decision that had led them to cross me. Ava had made her choice. Carter had made his. Now it was my turn. By the time the weekend came, I wasn't the man she had walked out on. That Daniel was broken and blindsided. This Daniel was calculating, ready to strike. They had underestimated me, my intelligence, my resilience. It was the last mistake they would ever make. Anger alone wasn't enough to act on. It never was. I'd built my empire by staying ahead of my competitors, anticipating their moves long before they even considered making them. Now, Carter and Ava were just another challenge, and I would treat them with the same cold efficiency. If they thought they'd won, they were about to discover how dangerous it was to corner a strategist. I spent the next few weeks immersed in silent preparation. Carter had been clever, but he'd underestimated my instinct for details. Fraud is a delicate art, but arrogance leaves fingerprints, and Carter's were all over the company's financials. Shell accounts disguised as consulting fees, money funneled through obscure subsidiaries. It was all there, hidden in plain sight. Ava's involvement wasn't limited to personal betrayal. She had helped Carter craft the cover stories, ensuring the paper trail was as murky as possible. I hired the best forensic team money could buy, people I trusted completely. They worked discreetly, piecing together the tangled web Carter had spun. The evidence grew by the day: encrypted files, falsified records, and suspicious transfers. Every revelation was a blow to the man I had once considered a friend. Parallel to this, I moved pieces on the legal chessboard. My attorney, a bulldog of a man with a reputation for winning impossible cases, ensured my prenuptial agreement would hold up against any challenge Ava might mount. I tightened my control over the company, quietly consolidating my authority on the board and positioning allies in key roles. But that wasn't enough. The world needed to see what they had done, not just to me, but to the company I had poured my soul into. I arranged for the revelation to happen on my terms at the annual corporate gala, a stage perfectly set for their downfall. Behind the scenes, I prepared my allies. Key board members, major investors, and influential partners all received subtle warnings about upcoming changes. I framed the narrative carefully, weaving loyalty and transparency into every conversation. The goal was simple. When the storm hit, no one would question where my allegiances lay. Meanwhile, Ava and Carter lived in blissful ignorance. Ava flaunted her newfound freedom on social media, posting photos of lavish dinners and idyllic weekends. Carter, ever the opportunist, used our company's success as his soapbox, touting his leadership skills at every opportunity. Gala approached, and I refined my plan to perfection. My speech was the centerpiece, designed to start as a celebration of the company's success before taking a sharp, unforgettable turn. But it wasn't just words that would destroy them. The evidence I had gathered would do the real damage, presented in a way they couldn't deny or escape. On the night of the event, I stood before a sea of expectant faces, knowing everything I had worked toward was about to culminate. My voice was steady as I began my address, my mind sharp as I saw Carter's face in the crowd. The moment of truth was near. They had played their hand. Now it was time for me to play mine. The ballroom was electric that evening, a mix of polished elegance and underlying anticipation. The gala wasn't just an event, it was a testament to my empire's success. Hundreds of key figures, investors, board members, partners, and media had gathered to celebrate the company's monumental achievements. As I stood at the edge of the room, watching the crowd mingle under the crystal chandeliers, I felt the tension within me tighten into a razor-sharp focus. This night wasn't only about recognition, it was about exposure. Carter moved through the crowd with practiced ease, his smile as polished as the champagne glasses he casually toasted with. He wore the confidence of a man who believed he'd gotten away with everything. Ava, radiant in a silver gown, was by his side, laughing and exchanging pleasantries with the people I had once trusted to stand by me. It was almost comical how unaware they were of what was coming. At precisely 8 o'clock, the MC announced me. A polite hush fell over the room as I took the stage. My speech began, predictably enough, acknowledgements of hard work, gratitude for the company's continued success, and a vision for the future. The crowd responded warmly, as they always did. Then I shifted my tone. As we celebrate tonight, it's also a moment to reflect on what we stand for. Integrity, loyalty, and trust, I said, scanning the room with deliberate intensity. But sometimes we're forced to confront the fact that not everyone shares those values. A murmur rippled through the audience, soft at first but growing as my words sank in. Carter's smile faltered, his posture stiffening. Ava's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. It has come to my attention, I continued, my voice calm but laced with steel, that certain individuals within this organization have acted in ways that violate our core principles. They've not only betrayed the trust of this company, but the trust of everyone in this room. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. Effective immediately, I announced, Carter Brooks has been terminated as CFO, pending legal action for embezzlement, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Carter stood frozen by the bar, his face pale. Ava's grip tightened around her glass, her knuckles white. "Come with us, Ham," Carter said, his voice a whisper, manifesting desire. "No," Ava said, stopping him. "Let us finish this." "Oh, and one more thing," I added, shifting my gaze to Ava. Betrayal isn't just a professional failing. It's personal, and it always comes at a cost. Mrs. Stryker's eyes were closing, but now she opened them again. My team, stationed discreetly around the room, moved swiftly. Screens lit up with evidence. Bank transfers, email exchanges, documents bearing Carter's and Ava's fingerprints. A timeline of their deceit played out in stark clarity for all to see. The crowd's shock was palpable. People stared, some in disbelief, others in quiet vindication. Carter stammered, trying to speak, but no one listened. Ava's composure shattered, her face flushed with humiliation as whispers spread like wildfire. It was the moment I had waited for. Their masks had slipped, and the truth was out in the open. The empire they thought they had seized was crumbling beneath them. The days following the gala unfolded like a meticulously planned symphony. Carter's public disgrace was only the overture. The crescendo was yet to come. Within hours of my speech, legal teams were already circling him, and the media frenzy ignited with full force. The once respected CFO now found his name splashed across headlines alongside words like embezzlement and fraud. Ava wasn't spared either. Though she had no official ties to the company, her name became a fixture in every sordid report. Social media had a field day dissecting her fall from grace. Her curated posts of lavish dinners and vacations now evidence of her complicity in Carter's crimes. The same people who had once admired her for her ambition and betrayal. At first I thought she might try to fight back, but Ava had underestimated the fortress I had built around myself. The airtight prenuptial agreement she once dismissed as a mere formality was now her undoing. She had walked out of our marriage, and as a result she had forfeited any claim to my wealth. The house, mine. The cars, mine. Even the jewelry I had gifted her was repossessed to cover her growing legal fees. Carter, meanwhile, faced not just the legal ramifications but also the social and professional fallout. Once a rising star in the corporate world, he now found doors slammed in his face. Investors who had once sought his advice now avoided him like a leper. The scandal meant he couldn't secure another job in the industry. His career was effectively over, but I wasn't done yet. The forensic accountant I had hired ensured every detail of their scheme was unraveled and made public. Carter's shell companies were seized, and the money they had siphoned was returned to the company. The employees, whose bonuses and pensions had been affected by his greed, received everything they were owed. The board of directors, initially shocked by the revelations, rallied behind me. My swift and decisive actions reaffirmed their trust in my leadership. Months later, I stood in my penthouse, watching the city lights twinkle like stars. My empire was intact, stronger even, with every weak link excised. A message buzzed on my phone. It was from Ava. "I made a mistake. Please, let's talk," she said shortly. Stared at her words, a faint smile tugging at the corner of my lips. Ava had gambled everything on her betrayal, and lost. The life she had envisioned with Carter had disintegrated, leaving her with nothing but regret. I deleted the message without replying. Ava's absence no longer felt like a loss. Instead, it was a liberation. The betrayal had been painful, but it had sharpened my instincts, clarified my priorities, and reminded me of the power of loyalty and integrity. They thought they had destroyed me, but in the end I was the one left standing, unbroken. If betrayal was their game, then justice was mine, and I had won.